Hey everybody, welcome to ARE Live. I'm Mark Tier, the founder of Black Spectacles. During the webinar today, we're going to be joined by three panelists who have taken the ARE online. They're going to share their experiences with you and sort of share, all the stuff you're going to need to know to successfully take this exam remotely and online. And we just shared a link in the chat for you to visit NCARB's site for all the details, which I'd recommend that you check out because they continue to add and refine the details for how you do this. So make sure you grab that link. For those of you who are new to Black Spectacles and joining us for the first time, Black Spectacles is the first ever NCARB approved test prep provider for all 6 of the ARE divisions. We offer a comprehensive test prep for the ARE with video lectures and practice exams and flashcards and virtual workshops. And it's all available online with memberships either for individuals or firms or chapters or schools, AI chapters, I should say. So that's a little bit about how we are. I'm proud to say we recently launched our Pass the ARE guarantee, which says that we're so confident that if you use our our expert membership to the fullest, that you will pass the ARE. And if by chance you don't, we're putting our money where our mouth is and we will pay for you to retake the test. So to read more about that guarantee and our individual memberships, and just to sort of see what kind of materials we offer, you can go to blackspectacles.com/ARE5 exam prep. And again, we just shared a link in the chat box as well. As I mentioned, we also have group membership. So to learn more about, how you can get your whole firm on a membership and have your boss pay for it, you can go to blackspectacles.com/pricing/group/firm. And again, we just posted a link for that as well. Wanted to give you a heads up about our next ARE live broadcast, which is going to be on April 15th of 2021. We'll review some of the most important concepts of the practice management exam. And we'll review a mock exam during that time with Mike Newman. So we'll go through about 5 questions or so that cover PCM knowledge and skills related to pre-contract tasks on topics that include negotiation, human resource management, as well as consultant development and a couple of others. So we're going to send you a link about a week before that session goes live. When we do that, be sure to go to the mock exam ahead of time so you can review your answers live with Mike during the session. Today, we're going to be engaging exclusively on our online ARE community. So I'm going to go over there right now. I'm going to type in community.blackspectacles.com. And then if you look for the ARE Live button there, kind of in the middle there on the left, you click that, and then that first topic, that's the one you're looking for. So we're gonna engage there. So if you have questions during the session, please post your questions there. We will be working with our community to get answers there. And even if you don't have a question, just go over there to say hi. Because we're going to be everyone who posts in that thread today will be eligible to win a free Black Spectacles t-shirt. So if you just say hi, that I guess qualifies you to be entered into that drawing. But I guess what's probably even more important is just so that you know that community is designed as a place for you to go to ask questions as you go through the process of taking the exam. And secondly, it's also there for you to sort of find inspiration. The exam is a long, difficult process, but there's a lot of people who have passed it and gone before you. So listening to their stories and seeing how they did it and what some of their tips are, it's usually really reassuring to read those stories, but also there's usually a couple of things you can kind of learn and adopt in your process for passing the exams. So certainly encourage all of you. It's a free resource, so certainly encourage all of you to go over there and engage in that community. Lastly, today we have a special discount on Black Spectacles 6-month memberships to share. So we'll stick around to the end of the episode and we'll share the coupon code for that. I told you that I had 3 guests today, and I want to tell you a little bit about them. So first, Molly McNamara is the co-founder of the Get Go group, and she's based in Washington State. She received her Master's of Architecture from the University of Texas at Austin and an undergraduate architecture degree from University of California, Berkeley, and recently passed all of her exams remotely. So welcome, Molly.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, happy to have you. So we also have Nolan Davis Jr. Nolan is a project specialist at EUA in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He's a member of NOMA and is taking an active role through the local chapter iNOMA and is currently serving as a parliamentarian on the executive board. So welcome, Nolan.
Hi.
Happy to have you. And lastly, we have Noah Fitch. Noah is a designer at GMT Home Designs, which is a small architecture firm that specializes in high-end residential design throughout New England. He received his Bachelor's of Science in Geology from St. Lawrence University and his Master of Architecture from UC Berkeley as well. Welcome, Noah.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, man, happy to have you as well. So let's hop in. Let's go to our first question here that we wanted to talk about. And Molly, maybe we can start with you. So what do you think? So now the ARE 5.1, I think they call it now, is available online. So Molly, what do you think? What do you think about that? The idea that the test is now available online.
I think it's a really positive step. I think it provides more flexibility for test takers. And as somebody that lives kind of remote and at least an hour from the nearest testing center, it makes it a lot easier. And I think that it's also available internationally, probably more broadly, for people that are not living in the US right now. And I think once they figure out kind of the kinks and Prometric and stuff, it'll be a really great way to take the test and provides a lot of help for people that can't make it to the testing center.
Yeah. So that's a good point about sort of the travel time and I actually hadn't even thought about the international part. You're absolutely right. Nolman, what do you think? What is your sort of perspective on the ARE now being available online?
I enjoy this online too, kind of for what Molly mentioned about traveling and everything, but also it's something about being able to take a exam in the comfort of your own space without having I kind of the built up anxiety of going to a location that you're not really familiar with, and the anxiety of that whole experience.
Yeah, it's a good point. I don't know. Do they let you have your favorite blankie or your favorite? I'm thinking of my kids. Your favorite, stuffed animal, so that you can reduce your anxiety. I think maybe that's something they should add to the allowable things you can bring with you. That's a good point about reducing anxiety. Noah, how about you? What are your thoughts about ARE now being available online?
I think it's a great step. In general, it makes the test more accessible for, like Molly was saying, people in remote regions, but also
Mhm.
for people whose schedules are really complicated. I know I have a 9-month-old at home, and so it was just a little bit daunting figuring out not only taking the exam for an extended period of time, but getting to a testing center. So just being able to take it in my home was nice, made it more accessible. But also, like what was previously mentioned, is it reduces the anxiety, or at least has the potential to, by taking it in a familiar environment. So both of those are really positive changes.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's go to the next question. So many people who let's say confront the exam. Um, it's a difficult process, but and frankly, it's a roadblock for so many people. I wonder what you guys think about the fact that the exam is online now, which might sound like a small thing. I don't know. I've sort of wondered if it actually might even have the impact or the potential to sort of, I don't know, advance the profession a little bit forward. Noah, I wonder, I don't know, I wonder what your reaction to that thought is.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it just goes towards the exam being more accessible. And when it's in your home, it's more physically accessible, but it's also, there's less of a psychological barrier, I think, in that there's increased ease in knowing that you can take it in your own home. And so I think that there's just a lot of stress in figuring out the logistics and planning uh, taking the tests and exams. And I think that the easier that you can possibly make those logistics be, then the better.
Molly, what are your thoughts? Do you think this is really, I don't know, is it not really make that much of a change in terms of like advancing the profession, or do you think it has, I don't know, it is sort of moving things forward a little bit for us?
I do think that, I don't know if it moves the profession as a whole forward, but I do think
Mhm.
that it modernizes the process of licensure. And
Mm.
there are a lot of fields that have already been providing this online option for years. So I think that
Yeah.
it's good that architecture is moving in the same direction.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. You made me think of, I feel like every senior architect I've encountered, there, whenever you sort of you say the phrase ARE, you get a lecture about, what it was like doing it by pencil for
Oh
2
yeah,
days. So I like
having to
that.
go on, yeah, a whole series of times where you just sit in a room with lots of people and actually have to draft stuff out, which is crazy.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. I've spoken to a lot of people, of course, over the last like 9 months about this, and everyone who's not necessarily an architect, their first reaction is, "Wait, it's not online right now," which I've always thought was kind of funny. Um, Norman, what do you think? Neutral or moves the profession forward? What are your thoughts, or backwards, I guess?
I guess a little bit more neutral. I do agree though that it modernizes the process in a way.
Hmm.
Because when you think about it, over the past couple months, a lot of people have been working from home, and if you're studying from home,
Yeah,
everything's basically right there. But then you would have to go, to a site to take the exam instead of it still being in that process that you're used to every day.
yeah, yeah. I think that makes a ton of sense. Um, okay, so I think maybe the consensus here is maybe it's not so much that it moves the profession forward, but it does sort of remove some roadblocks and brings it up to sort of a, I don't know, a modern contemporary sort of expectation that we probably all have in 2021. If we move on to the next one, Nolman, I'll let you take this next question. This new online exam, it has a couple extra requirements. What did you have to do to prepare for sort of the remote aspect of this experience?
Well, one of the things I had to do was, I guess, set my area upright. I had to make sure um, that the area that I was taking the exam in was basically, was free from everything that, would be flagged. I
Uh-huh.
did purchase a external webcam. I have one that's like built into my laptop, but I need to
Right.
make sure to purchase that. And then also, I guess, just make sure that the internet is good.
Hmm.
It's just little things like that that you don't really think about, but during test time, that can have an impact if your internet is bad, or it's lagging or anything like that, or you feel like, oh, I have a webcam, but all of a sudden it's not high quality that it needs to be. So taking that, I guess it was like a prep exam that
Hmm.
they allow you to do, where they
Yeah.
walk you through the area that you're going to be taking,
Uh-huh.
and they basically point out like, hey, you can't have that, or that's fine, or make sure to do this on the actual test day.
Hmm.
That was
So,
really helpful.
Norman, in that prep exam, um, tell me a little bit about that. Is that just a practice exam, or do they go through like how to set up your area and all the stuff that you need?
It was actually literally like I was going to take that exam that day. It kind of threw me off for a little bit because I thought it was just going to be uh, kind of casual in a way, checking my surroundings, but they actually set you up, which is a good thing. Like you're
Hmm.
about to take the exam, you can't have anyone, in the same area as you, stuff has to be put away. They actually take you through the full process of like standing up in front of the camera so that
Wow.
so that they can check you. You have to rotate the camera to see everything that's around you. Any papers are put away, your ID card and everything. So it was
Huh.
really beneficial.
And that was pre-recorded. It wasn't like an actual, live person kind of checking you in, right?
Nope, it was actually a live person.
Wow.
Yeah,
Huh.
you schedule the time to kind of have this walkthrough
Okay.
before your exam, and it's literally like the how you would take it, for actually taking the exam.
Yeah. Okay. That's great to know. Noah, how about yourself? What were your preparations for taking this exam remotely?
Well, I didn't use that walkthrough, but I can imagine how that would be super helpful, because, like what was mentioned, there's a lot of guidelines and criteria about, um, your environment, and
Hmm.
you have to be in a space, for example, without any clutter. There can't be anything that would give you what they say is an unfair advantage. So you can't have anything, like a book or anything on the walls. You have to have certain hardware specifications, like you have to have an external camera, and that camera also has to be able to autofocus because you end up using your ID, and they have to be able to use the camera to focus in on your name on the ID. So there's a bunch of like little criteria that I think is really important to read the fine print about prior to taking the exam, just because ultimately you want to minimize the amount of stress that you have, the day of the exam. And so I found myself, even having read through everything multiple times, just a few minutes before logging on, wondering, oh, like, does my environment, meet all of these criteria? So I think that the more you can read, and if you do one of those walkthroughs, like what was mentioned, I think that'd be really beneficial.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I guess what I'm starting to kind of realize here is it sounds like, it's funny. I guess when I think about my experience, taking when I did it was 9 tests. All the like time you spend, driving to or taking the subway to the testing center and then driving back and doing that for every single test, it takes a lot of time. Um, I guess, we've seen some comments of people who are like, man, that was such a pain in the butt to have to do all that stuff. If you think about it, maybe it's a couple hours to sort of get it all set up, but then you're not sort of wasting all that time kind of traveling back and forth and whatever. So maybe it actually is a time savings at the end. But it does sound like there's a good kind of like need for prepping your space and kind of understanding all the stuff you got to have before you get going, which is different. So thank you, Noah. Molly, how about you? What were your preparations for taking the exam remotely?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Noah and Nolman covered a lot of the kind of basics, but I would say
Yeah.
to just make sure you read all of NCARB's requirements and suggestions very carefully. And I had a checklist to make sure that I was setting up things as they kind of prescribe them. I didn't do the run through, but it does sound like that would be really beneficial. I don't know if they were offering that right away. I think that they added that maybe a week or two into offering the online.
Got it.
Um, you can do a basic system check with the ProProctor software on Prometric's website, so you can at least have them verify your internet and your webcam and microphone are working. So I would
Okay.
say definitely do that. My space, I'm lucky to have like an office area because I'm working from home.
Yeah.
So our second bedroom has just been turned into an office. But yeah, you have to cover up your bookshelves, make sure your desk is completely clean. There can't be any words or anything on walls. So like we have posters, so
Yeah.
we had to take that stuff down. I don't think it took more than half an hour to prepare the space, but I think
Okay.
do that the night before. Don't leave that to right before the test. It just adds anxiety. Um,
Yeah, I think
and then
that sounds like a really
I
good
would
point.
I would also, oh sorry, I would also just recommend taking the practice exam that NCARB has in the same environment that you would be taking the test.
Hmm.
Just that helps you kind of, you already have that mindset, even if it's not the real thing. It feels more real if you're also without the distractions.
Yeah, that's great. And then Molly, specifically, because it sounds like this webcam and sort of the specific webcam and the requirements around that are sort of important. What was the webcam that you used? And off the top of your head, do you remember the specific requirements that you need to follow for that?
I think that well, Nolman's point was that the autofocus is the most important. And I had actually emailed NCARB and verified which model, but I got, I think it's a Nexigo. It's a 60 frame per second with autofocus. I don't think you need to get the 60 frame per second because there are some that are $50 exactly.
Okay.
But anything with an autofocus and decent picture quality is probably sufficient for their purposes.
Okay. Got it. Nolan or Noah, do either of you have anything to add to, the kind of webcam? How did it go? with the one that you had, if you don't really have anything to add. Maybe Nolan, Nolman, I'll ask you first.
As far as the webcam, I just had a kind of one that Molly described. It was kind of the external one that you hang on the top of your laptop or computer with a long
Mhm.
cord, because you're going to need to hold it in your hand and face it different directions and everything.
So you sort of have to, move it around to show them that, there's nobody nobody hiding in the corner giving you all the answers, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like show me underneath the table, behind the chair,
Hmm.
different things like that. I will add though that it's a good idea. I know that I believe it's a half an hour or an hour you can actually sign on early to kind of get that process out the way. I ended up signing on closer to my actual test time, so it kind of prolonged the actual time in full that I would be taking the exam. So if you had like something scheduled, right after you were planning to end the exam,
Hmm.
that may leak into that time and, push your actual test time further out. You don't lose any of the actual test taking time, it just makes it longer.
Let me say that back to you, make sure I'm understanding, Nolman. So what you're sort of saying is make sure that you essentially log in, 15, 20, 30 minutes in advance so that you have, so that you kind of have everything set up and ready to go so you can really start at the sort of at the right start, or the start time you were expecting to start at. Did I get that right?
Yeah, so if like your exam time is at 8 o'clock, I would
Hmm.
suggest, logging in a half an hour early, and you can actually run through the process of doing the whole, checking yourself and checking the surroundings and everything with someone. That way
Okay.
you're done and you're just sitting there, ready for, your actual exam.
That's good. How long did it actually take to sort of do that setup part with the person on the other end? Is it just a 5-minute thing, or does it take a lot longer than that?
It's not too long. Mine's only took about maybe 5 or so minutes, just
Okay.
because I did that walkthrough beforehand,
Yeah.
so I knew exactly like what to put up and what to cover. But
Okay.
if you have something out, and you didn't do the walkthrough, then you're gonna have to put the camera down, take it down or cover it up, and that may take time.
Got it. And Molly, was it about the same for you? That setup time was only 5 or 10 minutes or something. Is that right? Or what was your sort of
Yeah,
time
once I
there?
got hooked up with a proctor, that's kind of the variable that you can't control. I think definitely signing in half hour early is a really good idea. I usually would do it either half an hour to leave at least 5 minutes, but it can take up to 10 minutes to get a proctor. So the
Oh,
actual
really?
process of showing them your ID and stuff doesn't take that long, but sometimes you're waiting a little bit for them to queue you up.
Okay. So let me say that back to you. So number one, when you sort of log in for this sort of setup period, first you're waiting for somebody, one of the proctors, to sort of accept you, let's just say. And
Mhm.
that can take some time. So maybe that takes 10 minutes or something, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, whatever it might be. Then they have to do the check-in process where they're kind of checking out your space and everything. That might take 5 or 10 minutes as well. So there you go. There's 20 minutes. Um, and then you have 10 minutes
Yeah.
to kind of cool off before you take the test. Is that about right?
No, they'll launch your exam right away. So even if it's 10 minutes still before your appointment time, they'll launch your exam. So you're essentially starting it a little bit early, but it doesn't eat
Oh, I
into your
see.
time if they do go past the start time. So it's not a necessary thing, but as Nolman was saying, like don't schedule anything for after your test because you can't guarantee exactly when your appointment will really end.
Got it. Got it. That makes a ton of sense. Noah, what are your thoughts on this topic here about specifically the webcam and specific requirements for that?
Well, I think everything that mentioned was accurate. Just making sure that it autofocuses is important, and making sure that you have, plenty of cord length, because like Nolan was mentioning, they really have you take the camera to look under your desk and around your room, and you don't want to be in a position where, your cord is tangled or wrapped around something and you're not able to do that.
Got it. What a funny thing, you know? I mean, even just writing that, plenty of chord length. Like it's almost a laughable thing that that's part of taking the ARE now. But I mean, I get it. It makes sense, I suppose. And Noah, what was your sort of setup process? Was it the same thing? You know, you sort of logged in 30 minutes early and, waited 10 minutes for a proctor and then, 10 minutes to verify everything and then got going? Or what was your setup process like?
Yeah, it was just about that. One thing did happen to me when I was logging on is what was previously mentioned is that prior to beginning your test, you have to take a system readiness check. And that pretty much just checks that, the software that you install on your computer is working, but also tests your upload and download speed of your internet just to make sure that you're operating on an internet that's fast enough to handle taking the exam.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that the day before, which I did in my case, and you also do that the day of when you're logging on to your exam. And despite me passing that system readiness check, when I was connected with my proctor for the first time, and they're
Mm-hmm.
checking your environment, I was noticing some lagginess, and they
Mm-hmm.
actually ended up cutting me off and then having me log out and log back on. And so, I suppose that's something that anyone can expect might happen to them. If even despite passing the systems readiness check, having appropriate upload and download speeds, it's good to, make sure that you do everything in your power to make sure that, your internet is operating at, fast speeds. And maybe that means that if you have roommates or family members that are on devices, just ask them to, not
Yeah,
stream anything or, to put your plane on airplane mode or something, your phone.
that's right. No kids playing video games during your podcast kind of thing, or webinar.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Cool. Let me see here if there's any other thoughts I wanted to ask. I guess there's a lot of questions on our community about like what specific model did you buy, et cetera. Noah, I'm guessing NCARB has sort of a list of approved, webcams that work. Did you observe anything like that?
No, I didn't observe anything like that. I ended up using a Logitech webcam, and I borrowed it from my workplace, and that was because
Mhm.
it just met sort of those main two requirements that we previously mentioned, just its ability to autofocus and its ability to have a long cord. And as long as it meets those two criteria, in my experience, I think that it's great.
Okay. Molly or Nolman, do you know of any sort of, pre-approved, models that NCARB has, or is it just sort of like find something that meets these requirements?
I was looking for one because
Yeah.
that seems to be something that would make sense for them to provide. But
Yeah.
I just basically Googled or on Amazon. I went and
Yeah.
searched for autofocus camera and external. It doesn't necessarily specify the cord length, but there are photos so you can kind of tell. But they do give you $50. So if you're looking for something that is
Oh, wow.
within that
Yes.
budget, just keep that in mind because I looked at some that I was like, oh, well, maybe I can use a better webcam for future, I don't know, conference calls. But
Sure.
I ended up going with Nexigo, which is sort of an off-brand Logitech type thing.
Got it.
But it works just fine.
Okay. I didn't know they gave you $50. How does that work? They give you some sort of a credit toward one of your tests or something?
Yeah. So when you sign up for your first online exam, they tell you that they're going to credit you, give you basically a Visa gift card or something to that. It's like
Oh, got it.
they'll send you a link and you can use that.
Okay. Cool. And I guess there is at least a list of requirements that NCARB has put together for the webcam. So we're going to post that on the community in this thread. So everybody can go check that out over there. So let's move on to question number 5. Noah, thinking about taking the exam remotely versus doing it in person, what are some of the advantages you observed of taking it remotely?
Yeah, so there are a lot of advantages. And, one of the main ones is that you can just take it in a familiar environment. I study in the same place in my house every morning. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was nice to take the exam in a place that I knew I had reviewed the material and perhaps something psychological happens where,
Right.
the information that you had studied, like at that desk in that chair, is more accessible to you because,
Yeah.
you had gone over the material in that very place. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but that certainly felt like an advantage at the time. I would say that there are also some disadvantages, um, because I think that I thought that the process was going to be like extremely seamless, and that because I was doing it on my own computer and in my own space, that I would have everything worked out. But I think that because I did experience some connectivity issues, and because
Yeah.
there wasn't a person there who I could ask questions to, that did add a level of frustration to my test taking process,
Hmm.
which I wasn't necessarily anticipating.
Okay. So that's a great comment there. I appreciate that. So in many ways, to say it back to you, maybe it's sort of about like trying to anticipate or sort of knowing in advance. All right, here's some of the things that might kind of be snags, looking out for them in advance. If we're talking to people who are contemplating taking the exam remotely, does that sound about right to you, Noah?
Yeah, that sounds right. And I think ultimately it does come down to just being able to anticipate that, things might not go perfectly well. And, just in regards to the issue of connectivity, because, that was something that I experienced having problems with. If
Sure.
for any reason you do experience, connectivity issues when you're on your computer at your home, and, it like either freezes your exam or it kicks you off, I think it's important to not worry and not get really stressed out about it right away, because you actually have three opportunities to take that same exam. So, for example, if you're on question 15 and you're having connectivity issues, and the system logs you off, you do not have to start your exam from the beginning again. So what you
Mm.
end up doing is you end up logging back on, and then you go through the whole process that we talked about before about getting paired up with a proctor, and they check your environment, and then you get right back to your exam. And time hasn't
Okay.
been running the whole time. The time begins right where you left off, and you're right on the same question. But you do really have those three opportunities, so I don't think
Mhm.
that you really have to stress out until the third one. But even then, I would encourage you not to be too stressed about it, because I think that is the biggest enemy in all of this, is just being worried.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really helpful. No, I really appreciate you sharing that because um, I would guess if I was someone who is thinking about taking the test online, hearing that would be really reassuring. And also, if I didn't know that and that happened to me, I would probably freak out. So hearing that's really reassuring, and so I appreciate you sharing that a lot, Noah. Molly, what about
Mm.
you? What did you observe as some of the advantages of taking this exam remotely?
I agree that it also isn't completely seamless, but I was definitely more comfortable than I would have been going into a testing center. I don't know if it's even outside of COVID, I would have perhaps been um, really stressed out, and I don't. It's very clinical to go into a testing center, so having my
Yeah.
own space and just feeling like I wasn't being surrounded by other people, I
Yeah.
find that comforting. And also, you don't have to wear a mask right now. So if you go into a
Yeah.
testing center, you have to wear a mask the entire test, which doesn't seem super appealing.
I'm guessing you could also you can wear the pandemic uniform, which is of course sweatpants and your slippers, right, during the test, which you can't otherwise normally
Absolutely.
do.
Yes, I wear leggings every test.
There you go. That's awesome. Thank you, Molly. How about you, Nolman? What did you observe as some advantages of taking this thing remotely?
Kind of the same thing. Just, as I mentioned, the environment and, the comfort of sitting there, and your in your comfortable clothes and everything like that. It really helped out.
Yeah.
Just keep the stress down. One thing, when Molly brought up comfortable clothes, one thing that I did enjoy that, seeing that the proctor basically asks you, when you're going through and checking your environment, they're checking you, like,
Mhm.
hey, do you prefer a male or a female person to kind of check your surroundings and check, your
Mhm.
actual person.
Oh wow.
Just to make it more comfortable for people, depending on, whatever they would like. So that was really good. But the actual taking it remotely, it was pretty nice not having to worry about, driving in and, being there and, you know, if something was to happen en route or anything like that, like I'm literally just waking up or,
Yeah, yeah.
studying until the last minute.
I remember that. I would get to the testing centers at least like an hour early just because at least here in Chicago, you never knew with traffic or, you could have the subway could stop for half an hour for some random reason. That's a great point. That kind of eliminates that. So, maybe you eliminate the commuting potential issues and replace it with, internet potential issues. So, interesting kind of swap there. Norman, moving on to our next question. Just in general, what do you wish you knew ahead of time that you didn't know when you took it for the first time online?
I would say, I guess just as when I'm sitting there, because I read through a whole lot, so I felt like I was pretty prepared. But one thing did happen while I was taking the actual exam. I started to, I guess, move around a lot and kind of, mess with my face and kind of, you
Yeah.
know, like a nervous twitch almost. And one thing
Hmm.
I would always end up doing is leaning forward a little bit and have my hand like in my, my mouth and my not in my mouth, but on my beard, like kind of resting my
Sure.
head. But I
Yeah.
was covering my mouth the whole time. And,
Oh,
they message me like, hey, would you, please don't cover your mouth, while you're taking the exam. So I
hmm.
guess like just ahead of time, knowing that even though it's, really comfortable to sit there and take the exam, you're in like a comfortable setting and, your
Yeah.
natural setting, you still need to like actually sit up straight and kind of be more aware of like sitting and how you're what you're
Yeah.
doing because I ended up being really paranoid because I was at the end. I was like, oh man, I don't want them to like fail
Right.
me or anything, so
Right.
I like remain like as still as possible and my arm ended up going to sleep. you
Oh
know
my God.
but it was all good, at the end. But
Yeah.
I was just like, oh man, like, they're actually, they're watching you,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
though, they're not physically, you don't see them on the screen anymore, they can see
Oh,
you still. So, you're just, they're not taking a break, while you're taking the exam.
so the takeaway there is to shave your beard, right? That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing, Norman. I'm just kidding, of course. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Noah, what do you? How about you? What did you wish you would have known ahead of time?
Well, I also have a beard, and I got those same comments from my
No
proctor
way. That's
because
funny.
I was apparently playing with it too much. And it's strange because it's a reminder that you are being watched, which is funny. But um, I think things that I would have liked to know ahead of time were definitely sort of that three strikes rule that I spoke about earlier. That if something goes wrong, that it's not immediately a problem because you'll be able to hop right back on. I
Hmm.
think another thing is that the proctors who you're able to chat with during the exam, they aren't necessarily your tech support. So, when I was having issues, I was communicating with them, but they weren't able to see your screen, weren't able to see my screen, and so they weren't necessarily able to diagnose, the problems that I was having. And so I found myself in those moments like a little frustrated and worried because I was like, oh man, who's going to solve the problems that I'm having? But I think that I would have just been more rest assured if I knew that everything would work out if you just kind of you know let it run its course and know that you have three shots and that for me was enough. So
Noah, what do you know about those three chances? Is it like you have three chances that day, that month, that year? Like, there's got to be boundaries around those three chances. What do you know about them?
sure, yeah, no, it's that day. So if you're taking the exam and you get kicked off, you can log back on, and then that logging back on is your second try, and then you
Okay.
get kicked off and then you log back on, that's your third try. And then if you get kicked off again, because of connectivity issues or
Mhm.
whatever else, then you have to reschedule your exam. So then you have to reschedule it for either like the next day, the next week. It didn't come to that for me because I was able to
Yeah.
complete the exam on my third try. But I will say on that third try, there was
Yeah.
definitely more stress than on the first and
Yeah.
second because I was confident with how I'd been taking the exam, but up until that point, and you really just want to cross the finish line.
Yep. Yep. Okay, and then so if you get if you're unable to get it resolved in those 3 chances, and like you said, you have to reschedule, are there costs involved, for that, or not so much to
That's a
reschedule?
really good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I would certainly hope that they would cover the cost, because so many of those things are completely out of your control, especially
Right.
given the fact that there is a systems readiness check. So anyone going into this exam definitely has the understanding that their internet is the speed is what is considered appropriate or necessary to take the exam. So, but I don't know the answer.
Okay. Well, we'll try to figure that out here on our team. Molly, how about you? What do you wish you'd known ahead of time?
I think that I also had some crashing experiences, especially with the first exam. I had it crash twice, so I was also very close to the 3 strikes. And the second time it crashed, there were only 15 minutes left in my exam. So I was like really frustrated and hoping that it was going to be okay. And I guess I would just say that remaining calm is really important and that crashing seems to be pretty normal. And that actually, even if you go to a testing center, sometimes
Mhm.
the exam crashes. So maybe that's not actually a disadvantage specific to taking it remotely. Uh, I I had only Wi-Fi the first time I took it, and um, I made sure to hardwire it the next time, and I still had a crash. So I don't know if it's entirely internet speed or if it's on Prometric's end, but I know that they're working to resolve those issues. Um, I think that part of that is making sure you log in early and do the readiness check because I've also had some issues just launching the exam. So there are hiccups and you just have to make sure that you try and remain calm and keep breathing.
Yeah.
And also just they'll read you the break policy as you're getting checked in. Um,
Mhm.
and that actually takes up a fair amount of time. So just use the bathroom before you get going because it actually takes up more time than you might think it would.
Mm. Hmm. Fascinating. It's really good advice, I think. That idea, a very simple idea of try to remain calm and expecting connection issues. I think that those 2 ideas right there would lower everybody's, probably lower my blood pressure and anxiety as you're sort of thinking about taking this test. And just sometimes just knowing what to expect, which again, that's really the goal of this session and bringing you guys together is to get people, get them a little advanced knowledge of what's going on so they kind of know what to expect. So again, thank you guys. This is really helpful. Molly, if we go to the next question, um, when you think about all the people who are listening to this and who are thinking about or who are preparing to take this exam remotely, what's the key advice you might share with them?
I would say to pace yourself and kind of plan out your time going into it. Set milestones for yourself. Make sure you know kind of when you want to take the breaks, knowing that the exam will lock after you take your break. So all of the questions you've viewed, make sure that you've answered them and have reviewed them before you go on your break. And take advantage of the break. You have it; it's flexible. I tried to take quick, short breaks just because I wanted to get it over with, but I would take one break probably halfway through. And also, I would recommend thinking about how many questions you need to get correct to pass because you could actually get a fair number of questions wrong and still pass the exam. So I think that was helpful for me.
That's great. Um, I'm trying to think. Yeah, pacing yourself. That's a very good one. Nolman, how about you? What advice would you give to folks taking the exam remotely?
Kind of along those lines. We kind of talked about it earlier, but like, you go into the exam, thinking about it almost like if you were going to a testing center, but in reality, you have that setup time with the proctor, you have the actual exam time and everything. So it may like shift a little bit depending on when you log on and how fast they can go through things. So just kind of having that idea of like, when you may end, if you have something planned or need to do something or, if something happens along with just, pacing yourself and everything. I can't remember if you were able to see this when like before you were going through scheduling your exam or not, but when actually scheduling the online exam, there's a lot of different time slots. And I was really surprised that I don't know if it's because of time zones or whatnot, but a lot of the time slots were just like throughout the day, throughout the night. I saw one that was like 3 o'clock in the morning. So I was like, man, like people are able to, really schedule, have flexibility. If
Mhm.
maybe you take tests good at night, you're a night owl. So I was seeing some that are like, really late at night, in the middle of the night, in the early morning. So it's a lot of flexibility as far as like when you actually take your exam. It's not just set business hours.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good because, like you say, I mean, in this case, they're not, they must have way more availability than the, the number of physical seats, in a testing, I don't know, room. So yeah, no, why don't you tell me or tell us, share your advice on taking the exam remotely.
Sure. Well, just in regards to the time slot issue, isn't really an issue, but I remember when I was signing on to my test, just the amount of time that it took to eventually start my exam. By the time I started my exam, it was after when my exam was scheduled for, and in that
Okay.
moment I was worried because I thought that, oh no, I'm going to be late for my exam because of just the amount of time it takes, to get ready with your proctor and to have them look at your room. But it really doesn't work like that. It's not like there's a bunch of people who are all of a sudden going to start their exam at 2:15. If you log on 15 minutes or half an hour before your exam, they know that you've logged on, and whenever you start your exam, you're going to have the appropriate amount of time from when you begin. So that would have been nice for me to know because I wouldn't have been stressed out at the beginning. But also just making sure the day before that you get your environment right, so you don't have to do it the day of the exam. Just make sure that your room is clean, whatever room that you're taking it in, that you've done your system readiness check, so that on the day of the exam, you don't have to wake up and do all of that just before, because really I think stress is the enemy, and just remaining calm, even if you have technological issues, because I think from our conversation, technological issues seem to be pretty common, but it doesn't
Mhm.
seem to be as common to have enough technological issues to actually, require rescheduling your exam. So if it happens, just try not to stress out about it, because it's probably going to be fine.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. And let me make sure I'm getting this right, Noah. So please correct me if I've got it wrong. So let's just say your exam is scheduled for 2 o'clock on March 18th, and you show up at 1:30, and you get all your, you get a proctor, they review your space, you're ready to go, but it took a while to get a proctor, and it's already like 2:15, so you're 15 minutes behind when you were supposed to start. That doesn't really matter. In other words, you still have the full amount of time to take your test, and you're not going to get cut off at the end because you started 15 minutes later than when you were supposed to start. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that would totally freak me out if we started at 2:15. I would be like, did I just lose 15 minutes on this test? So that's really great to hear that that's not a problem. Hmm. All right, cool. Well, that's really good stuff. So I want to thank everybody, Molly, Nolman, Noah, for sharing your experiences taking this test online. As everybody knows, it launched in the middle of December of 2020. So today it's relatively new. I'm sure those of you who are listening, many months later, things will be even more ironed out. And I suppose, general sort of principle here is if you run into any sort of snags, share that feedback with NCARB so that they can, it seems as though they're taking feedback seriously. And every day it appears like, as people are creating more awareness about what their experiences are, as well as, any snags they run into, those things are getting resolved, or NCARB is publishing articles or information about how to accommodate those sorts of things. So if you have feedback, definitely share with NCARB. Otherwise, really, really good experience shares here. So thank you, everybody. As I mentioned, at our next ARE live broadcast on April 15th, we're going to go over some of the most important concepts of practice management. And we'll review a mock exam with Mike Newman. We'll go through about 5 questions that cover PCM knowledge and skills specifically related to things like pre-contract tasks like negotiation and human resource management, consultant development, and so forth. So we're going to send you an email probably about a week before that session goes live. And when you get that, make sure you go through the mock exam ahead of time so you can review all your answers live during the session with Mike. We just posted a link to that, or you can just go to blackspectacles.com/podcast to sign up for that to make sure you don't miss it. To learn more about all of our ARE exam prep offerings, you can go to blackspectacles.com, where you can try out any of the course videos. And as a reminder, we've launched our ARE guarantee. We're confident that if you use our expert membership to the fullest, you'll pass the ARE. And if you don't, we're going to pay for your retake. So you can learn more about how to qualify for that or how to check out any of the individual memberships at blackspectacles.com. The lucky winner, as I mentioned at the top of this, for a Black Spectacles t-shirt is Kathy B. So Kathy, we will reach out to you via email to get your size and shipping information. And just a reminder, if you'd like to be eligible to win a t-shirt, feel free to post a question in our ARE community. Remember, our ARE community is always buzzing. It's not just during ARE Live. It's free and open at any time. Poke around and see what your fellow architects are up to. Again, if you have any questions, you can bring those questions there. We have experts, and our community is full of experts who will answer those. And also, we do a lot of work around trying to kind of reveal the stories behind people who are passing the test, because you're not alone. So many people have done this before and have struggled through it. And so hearing that and getting some tips along the way really does help. So that community is a great place to take advantage of. I want to talk a little bit about our individual discount. So you might be making summer plans because it's March 18th today. Don't forget about staying on track with studying for the ARE. And in fact, we're offering a 15% discount on all 6-month memberships to give you the opportunity to get licensed this year. So you can use code ARE, LIVEMAR15 to get 15% off all of our 6-month memberships. And keep in mind that the coupon code expires on April 15th, 2021, when our next ARE Live airs. Lastly, tomorrow we're going to send you an email follow-up about today's live broadcast. So please let us know what you think and share any suggestions that you may have. And be sure to also take our survey right after this webinar to give us some feedback. I promise we read every word that you write and use them to tune our next episodes. So thanks for watching.